Welcome back, nerds. Fino here with a guide for Yamanami Keisuke. He's a limited 4-star saber introduced in Guragura Shin Yamataikoku, and he's here to bring some unity to the pack of disparate attackers that are the Shinsengumi. Does he succeed? Hell no. Keisuke's the worst thing FGO's put out since last month. But here's the bigger question. Can he dethrone Gareth as the worst 4-star in recent memory? Let's find out. Leading things off is warrior but literate. As you can tell by that very strange wording, I'm working with tentative names here. The ones on NA will likely be different. This is a 3-turn party attack and NP gain buff that comes with 10 stars. Not bad necessarily, but not a lot to go on. Let's keep moving. Beauty of Nature is a 3-turn quicken arts buff and a 20% battery. All for Keisuke. This is our first real indication that something is wrong. Keisuke is premised on being a Shinsengumi support. But if that's the case, why aren't these buffs targetable? Sure, he could use the charge, and you could rely on his face cards on that front too, but the fact that he can't pitch this to someone else is a sign of indecisiveness. A half measure, in other words. The last of Keisuke's skills is the Kind One. It's a single hit party evade, 3k heal, and party ailment cleanse. So damage over time effects. Some of the Shinsengumi members are berserkers, and Hijikata in particular likes to play at low health, but a single evade is a small benefit on that front. Some of the other members have evades of their own, and if those are out, I guess Keisuke can bail them out of an oncoming double phantasm. I don't know, it's all very generic in a way that isn't particularly interesting, or necessarily useful. Adding insult to injury, the cleanse has strings attached. Why? What possible benefit is there to making it that narrow? And now we come to the showstopper, Keisuke's Noble Phantasm. Yamazakura is a non-damaging arts card that grants a 3-turn party attack buff, which scales with his NP level. It comes with a star income buff, 10 stars per turn, and 50% crit damage specifically for Shinsengumi allies. These effects last for 3 turns. The overcharge is a party battery beginning at an embarrassing 10%. At NP1, this is effectively just charisma, so if you have any intention of seriously using Keisuke, you'll want him at NP5. That gets you 40% attack. I'd question whether that's worth a dedicated Noble Phantasm, and in general, the weakness of Keisuke's skill set makes it so that supporting non-Shinsengumi units is a waste of effort. Without that 50% crit buff, he looks like an incredibly underwhelming and inconvenient support, which he is. A lot of what he does you can get from generic and even free servants. Compare him to Zhuge Liang, who gives 50% crit and 30% attack just with his skills, and 50% charge to a single target, with 20% of that splashing onto the rest of his team. There are no conditions to any of this, and he's got room to equip 2030 for star income. All you need to do is finish Ryuki and pick him. Most importantly, you don't need to roll him 5 times to do these basic tasks. But here's the crazy part. Most of the Shinsengumi don't want Keisuke around either. As of this recording, there are 8 Shinsengumi servants, one of which comes out after Keisuke. Of these, 3 are quick attackers, and if you guys know anything about our mean green friends, it's that they can loop with another copy of themselves, and there's some assassin What? Sorry, little mix-up. That was meant for a different video. And if you guys know anything about our mean green friends, it's that they're generally quite monogamous in their choice of support. Actually, is it monogamy if they're 2 of the same person? Whatever, my point is they like Scotty. Almost anything Keisuke does for a quick servant, the 2 Scotties do it with way less effort. Except provide that evade, I guess. His is on demand while caster Scotty's is locked to Gate of Sky. Then again, all 3 quick Shinsengumi have either evades or invulns of their own. All 3 are flavors of Okita, by the way. Saber Okita needs a lot of raw charge to get off the ground. Summer Okita Alter and Okita J Soji are AoE loopers, so they don't really have much room to incorporate Keisuke into their setups either. They're very charge hungry, so they'd take any number of 50% chargers over Keisuke's paltry 20%, especially Summer Okitan, who has the option of running Black Grail. Keisuke doesn't even have anything for Okita J's self-stun. If the guy had AoE debuff immunity, well, he still probably wouldn't see any use, but it'd be a start at least. Then we have the 3 Buster Shinsengumi. Of these 2 are berserkers. Nagakura Shinpachi isn't going to be out for a while, but his deal is that he wants to take hits to gain stars, and he has a guts and evade of his own to this end. His Noble Phantasm amplifies his crit damage, and he's got 1 turn of star absorption. So at least for a single turn, he could benefit if Keisuke gets his full combo off. However, this synergy falls apart after the 1 turn, since Shinpachi's berserker's star weight will result in Keisuke stealing all the stars. It's not all bad news. He has a remarkably short 4-turn cooldown on that absorption buff, 3 with the CDR pen, but that'll only bail you out 1 time. So maybe it's more like a roller coaster where 1 in 4 turns, the 2 get along splendidly, but Keisuke is just kinda sabotaging Shinpachi with his presence the other 3/4 of the time. Hijikata likes Keisuke's evade since he prefers to play at low health, But truth be told, he can get most of what he wants from Koyan Light between the artificially lowered health, stardump, and Buster crit and absorption buff. But even if you don't have your own, you could just borrow a Koyan, pair her with your own waiver and call it a day. I suppose if there's a silver lining for this relationship, it's that Hijikata has a multi-turn star absorption effect tied to his enmity skill, so Keisuke simply being on the field won't sabotage him. It's even got a 5-turn cooldown, so your downtime isn't even as bad. The last of the Buster Shinsengumi is the regular Okita Alter. She can actually utilize Keisuke's crit package, but she'd very much prefer to loop if given the opportunity. That, and with her absorption skill only lasting for a single turn, she's at the mercy of Keisuke's base absorption. Okita is 99 base absorption, Keisuke is 98. While he isn't an irresistible suction force like he is for Shinpachi, the two are undeniably competing for the same stars Keisuke generates, which is far from ideal. Lastly, we have the arts Shinsengumi. Saito is the only attacker in this category, and probably the member with the least janky relationship. He's pretty standard as far as arts attackers go, but with a crit buff and a couple of blue cards, there's at least a line of play beyond have Keisuke NP and hope he doesn't get in the way. If you're in the unfortunate position of grinding out a fight with the pair, they can try to assist each other in building charge back up with arts chains. Alternatively, arts teams have 30% spread charge through Castoria, so it's a lot more feasible to run the poster girl setup on Keisuke. 20% from Beauty of Nature, 20% from his append skill, and 30% from Castoria's attack buff leaves you only missing 30%. Castoria can hypothetically provide 20% of the deficit, but you probably want that to go to Saito instead. That said, 30% can be met by an arch chain and a bit of charge. Far from ideal, but doable before Keisuke bites it. Alternatively, swap between two Castorias for the missing 30%. Expensive, but not entirely out of the question. This is as close as Keisuke gets to having a legitimate use, and even here you can see the inconvenience caused by his deficient numbers. He doesn't really smooth over the weaknesses of the existing Shinsengumi. He haphazardly tries to amplify their strengths, but in a really inconvenient way. One that draws resources onto him and makes your team building less convenient, not more. But there is one last trick up his sleeve. A real atrocity, this one. Ever seen the double Van Gogh setup? Well, we have double Van Gogh at home. As a Shinsengumi himself, Keisuke receives his own crit buff. He also reaps the benefits of a hypothetical second Keisuke. You have stars, you have crit, overlapping attack and NP generation buffs, not to mention the two can actually use their offensive quicken arts buffs to do something. And get this, Keisuke of all fucking servants has an anti-berserker append skill, the most desirable append 3 in the game. What a fucking waste. That aside, you have two party evades between the pair, so it doesn't seem all that rancid, right? It's a funny novelty, sure, but what makes the double go system really work is the chain stun lock. Keisuke's got nothing on that front, so your opponents are going to get a lot more damage to stick, despite his heal. So I'm sorry to say that unlike the double go setup, the double Keisuke setup probably won't get you too far. For equipment, you're generally stuck with Winter Crystal or Kaleidoscope, so he doesn't sit on the field like a pretty paperweight. His Bonsi gives a little party NP gain and a bit of crit to his Shinsengumi allies, but it has the fatal weakness of both lacking any starting charge and requiring Keisuke to stay on the field. I personally wouldn't bother running command codes on this guy, but you can run star generation options if you're desperate enough to try and salvage Keisuke's relationship with the Buster servants. Purge codes can also be swapped in or out depending on the specific fight. It's sad, isn't it? They could unironically give this guy a 100% battery and he'd still be mediocre, but at least there'd be room to put him on Shinsengumi's setups. Currently, 6 out of the 8 Shinsengumi represent card types that run meta supports who don't have spread charge. This locks Keisuke out of an early NP plus poster girl combo, which would be the ideal way of getting rid of him. You might lose his evade if he goes down right away, but I'd say that's an acceptable trade-off. Generally speaking though, his presence is either ineffective or he actively gets in the way, and nothing he does makes him notable enough to run with non-Shinsengumi. He's just a really watered down, excessively niche, yet utterly incompetent support. But this does beg the question, is he worse than Summer Gareth? Gareth does more for Ozymandias than Keisuke does for Saito, and she can do that trick regardless of her NP level. Keisuke is beneath consideration for anything pretty much until he hits NP 5. He needs starting charge to use his Noble Phantasm, but his set of generic buffs means that, for the average servant, they could probably use something in his kit, even if there are a landslide of more efficient and often free alternatives. At the end of the day, both are atrociously bad servants, and neither is worth the resources or the effort to use them in a real team. But if I had to give the crown to someone, I think it'd be Keisuke. Let's say you play the game long enough. You get all the major supports in a couple of years. Once in a blue moon, you might fancy dusting off Gareth or Keisuke for some fuckery. With Gareth, you can pretty much toss her into your team and deal with the consequences as is. You know from the Gareth video that there are only 2 sun servants that can't immediately provide the buff themselves, and if you picked wrong, you'll find out right away. With Keisuke, you've got to put in more thought. Does this guy have enough charge? Did I pick the right Shinsengumi? Why did I roll 5 copies of this guy? You're investing more capital, mental and quartz, just to shoot yourself in the foot. So congrats, Keisuke. You're the worst 4-star of 2024 and a strong contender for being the worst 4-star of all time. Here's a final bit of trivia. The only other Shinsengumi servant with any dialogue related to Keisuke is Nagakura Shinpachi, a servant released after him. The impression I get is that he bombed so badly that, in the intervening 2 years since his release, the devs couldn't be bothered to call in the voice actors to do lines retroactively referencing him. Not even Okita's voice, Aoyuki, who definitely did lines for next year's Tiamat. Now then, history time. Yamanami Keisuke got his start as a swordsman in training. One day, though, he encountered a man named Kondo Isami, and the two had a little spar. Isami won, but he was impressed enough by Keisuke that he took him on as a student. At Isami's school, Keisuke met Okita Soji, who took quite a shine to him, and the two became fast friends. Like brothers, even. This relatively peaceful time in their lives would come to an end in just a few years. You see, they were living through the death throes of the Tokugawa shogunate. With the shogun's inability to fend off foreign influence, the emperor, who'd been relegated to the status of figurehead for centuries, broke with convention and ordered the expulsion of the barbarians. Local powers answered the call, sending off battles with first the foreigners and then the shogunate, whose weakness was seen as the rot, stopping them from making headway against the former. To stop the old order from coming apart, Kondo Isami, Okita Soji, Yamanami Keisuke, and a number of familiar faces joined the Roshigumi, a short-lived precursor to the Shinsengumi. For a number of reasons that aren't important to this story, they broke with the organization and remained in Kyoto, where they became half the organization that would be known as the Shinsengumi. They'd patrol the streets and act to protect the old capital from rebel designs. But there was trouble, and it came from that other half. The Shinsengumi was initially led by Serizawa Kamo and his loyalists, and the problem with Serizawa was that he had a monstrous temper. Small insults would rapidly escalate into violent incidents. He picked a fight with the school of sumo wrestlers and butchered a good number of them, and when a shop wouldn't pay him what is effectively protection money, he used a cannon to blow it apart. This thuggish behavior drew the ire of Kondo's crew, and they decided to rid themselves of their lunatic commander. Keisuke was a member of this hit squad, and with brutal efficiency, they carved up Serizawa and liquidated his followers, with a number of them being encouraged to do the right thing, if you catch my drift. Under Kondo's leadership, the Shinsengumi would guard Kyoto and even prevent a major plot to set the city ablaze. Not bad, right? You had big names like Ogita, Nagakura, Hijikata, and Saito running around getting into legendary sword fights. Except hey, there's a name missing from that list. Yamanami Keisuke. The reasons for what's about to happen next are murky, but there's quite a bit in the way of speculation. So let's talk rumors. One is that Keisuke had been cut from behind while stopping a criminal, and the injury never healed properly. Or maybe it was some unknown illness. Or maybe he stayed behind to guard headquarters. Regardless, he wasn't out there fighting in that supremely important operation. But look, he was a high-ranking member and technically second in command, so maybe we shouldn't read too much into this. Except there was another incident. You see, those headquarters were a little cramped and a little crap for these guardians of the old order, and they were risking their lives for these people, so the Shinsengumi got to thinking. It's time for an upgrade. Kondo and Hijikata settled on the Nishi Honganji Temple and took its most spacious room for the group. The monks there didn't much care for this, but they couldn't exactly eject the Shinsengumi. Supposedly, Yamanami objected vociferously to this. We killed Serizawa only a few years ago for this kind of thuggery. What business do we have acting like this? But Kondo brushed him off. His word, apparently, didn't count for much anymore. Despite nominally being second in command, Keisuke's influence was overshadowed by Hijikata's. The rumors are all over the place at this point. One is that Keisuke saw himself as a true patriot, and his comrades in arms were letting their power and status go to their heads. Another one goes the opposite direction. Keisuke saw a sinking ship. The Tokugawa were done for, and his buddies were too busy getting high off their own glory to see that. The third is that he had a tense relationship with Hijikata, and the humiliation of being usurped by the vice commander was too much for him to bear. But regardless of why, Keisuke penned a letter saying he quit and skipped town. Small problem though. You don't just quit the Shinsengumi. One of their central tenets was that if you were in for life, and you can only leave in death. So the Shinsengumi got to searching, and in the end, it was Okita Soji who found him. As with most things about Yamanami Keisuke, we get multiple versions of what followed. The first is that Okita, as a dutiful member of the Shinsengumi, took Yamanami captive and the latter was either unable or unwilling to resist. The second is that Okita goes, "If I can find you this easily, it won't take the others long. Get your ass moving." but Keisuke refused and insisted on being taken back. In this version, he never intended to get away and was looking for a death that would spare his friend's honor while hopefully waking up the power-mad Kondo and Hijikata. Back at headquarters, he encountered Nagakura Shinpachi, who offered to leave the door open. But Keisuke was very insistent on meeting his fate. Kondo and Hijikata would oblige him, and they ordered the deserter to commit seppuku. But the thing about disemboweling yourself is that you usually don't die right away. For this reason, there's usually a second, someone who stands behind you to put you out of your misery. Someone you can trust. In general, but also specifically to deliver a clean cut. So the last thing Yamanami Keisuke ever heard was the sound of Okita Soji's blade cutting the air behind him. Thanks for watching, lads. I'd like if you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more, and come out to my twitch.tv/Finotaisen where I stream every week, 3 p.m. Pacific time, Wednesday and then Friday through Sunday. This week I've got Trails in the Sky on Wednesday, Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel on Friday, Soul Calibur 6 on Saturday, and FGO on Sunday. Stop on by and hang out. Till next time.